So, hello everyone. My name is Leo. Today we're going to talk about SQL. SQL. Why SQL? SQL is still bread and butter for many, many jobs. You need it a lot. It's not going to be replaced anytime soon, and it's a lot of coding interviews. If you want to go into the data analysis, data science route, there's a SQL challenge in, I'd say, like every other or 1 in 3 interviews. Specifically, I think, for entry-level positions. Cool. So, quick note about Sql Dialects. Which one should you learn? It really doesn't matter. There's too many to really keep track. What I do want to say is pick one to study because they're all similar enough. I would not jump from dialect to dialect at all. You can avoid it. Don't confuse yourself. And in the long term, you're always going to be a little annoyed if you have to switch dialects, potentially. And I do think if you know one well enough, you can easily pick up the minor differences from the other one that you're interviewing and so on. Of course, Postgres is just an example here. If you're interviewing a company that uses Redshift, well, then Postgres is great. But if there's a specific one that you want to learn, then do that, please, right? They're all similar enough. Cool. I'm going to fly through the basics a bit. If it's too fast, if something doesn't get explained well enough, just please do interrupt me. SQL joins. The most classic join is the inner join. That's the default. You can imagine as table 1 overlaying table 2. You get the ones where they match. You use that all the time. Left join. You keep all of table 1, in this case, the left table, table 1, and you do keep the one of table 2 where there's the overlap. When would you use this? One example would be, say, you want to have all of the departments, even the departments that currently don't have employees. So you can do a left join and then select where and so on. So you just still have everyone, all the departments, even though you don't have any employees. If you did an inner join, you'd only have the departments that currently have employees. Right join, same as left join, just invert it and offset. Full join, yes. Clump everything together and go. Sometimes this is used. I don't see it all that often, but there might be the cases. Sweet. Inner joins. Now, this gets more interesting. This is where you reuse the same table and join on the same table again. Ideally, later on, we have time for some examples where this can pop up, but I'm also going to show you an example in a minute. The one thing I want to say is you can use you can do self joins, but you can also do left of the joins possible, right? Here's an example of when you would use it. For example, here you want to have all the employees, but you want to also see all the managers. But you do have everything already in one table, as you can see. So what you can do is you can select, basically punch in a query that I written out here for you, and then join it on itself, where the staff ID is someone else's manager's ID. Have the information of who's whose manager. Cool. Then, of course, sometimes an alternative to self-join, sometimes you just have to do subqueries. Again, it should be, I'm assuming that you guys know the basics a bit. If you don't, interrupt me. Subqueries are basically just other queries, and you spit out the values that you're interested in and use that, for example, in a where statement. Here's an example, right? Cool. So some questions that you could ask yourself is, when would you use an inner join, right? What's an example of using a left join? Would I use a self join, right? Cool. Now, and I'm really pedal to the metal a bit. Again, if this is too fast, just let me know. How would you tackle more complicated joins or subqueries? Again, I have some examples in the end. Yeah,
so
yes.
Just a quick thought. Just as you're going through this, maybe erring on the side of going slower, and then maybe we can set up multiple sessions like this if there's spillover. I'm just realizing that,
You're cutting out.
Oh, sorry.
Can you try again? Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Let me turn off my camera. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about this.
Nice.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying maybe it might make sense to err on the side of going a little slower, and if there's spillover, maybe we can do another session to follow this up.
Sure.
I'm just realizing with some of the SQL commands, it takes the brain a little while to parse it. At least it does for me. Just
yes, fair. That's fair. Okay, I'm also going to go slower when things get a little more complicated, but that's fair. I'll go slower. Thanks for the feedback. Cool. So generally speaking, what would be some strategies how you can tackle more complicated joins and subqueries? Well, the first thing is you look at your data model. You look at the relationships between the tables, and you really try to understand what's the foreign keys here, what's the primary keys there, how do all of these tables connect to each other. One thing I like to do, I think this helps me personally, is I like to just draw them out, and we can go through an example of this later. As in, here's table 1, here's this key. This key connects to this other table, table 2. So now I can merge them like this if I wanted to join in this key, right? What you also can do is maybe even draw them out, cut out little pieces of paper, and play around with them. Try to say, how can you overlap them so it makes sense? How could you join a different table so it makes sense? Because when you do have lots of different tables, it's easy to get lost. But as soon as you really understand the table relationships, you really know how to join them. And one thing that can help understand the table relationships is to draw it out or even play around with it visually. It helps me. The next strategy is, I call it divide and conquer. You want to split it up into the most easy queries that you can write, the most easy joins that you can write, and build on top of that, right? You can try that out first. First, you try out the ones, for example, when you jump back a couple of times, you just write the query that selects the department IDs where the location ID is 42, right? Make sure that works. And now you can punch that into the where and write the query around it. And if you build like this, you can add layer on layer. And in the end, you'll have completed a complicated task by what I call divide and conquer. So I basically said everything that's on the slide. The other thing I want to say is write clean code. As always, you write code not just for yourself, but for others. But you do also write it for yourself, because if you just vomit down your SQL query and later you're the person who has to parse it, you're going to make more mistakes than if you've had written it cleanly to begin with, right? And there's different styles that you can use. Correct me if I'm not always using the best style or practice as possible, then just let me know. But I hope you see some kind of things that you could follow during this presentation. Cool. Group by. Again, this is something you absolutely have to know, bread and butter stuff. You use it for aggregate functions when you want to see, okay, example would be, what's the average age of all the lines that are in my zoo? So you do select all the different animals in my zoo. So you do select animal and then average of age, and then you group by the animal, right? Any aggregate has to go into the group by function. Cool. Here's an example that I spit out for you. A totally real example on a real database. But I wanted to point out a few different things. And here's maybe one moment where we can slow down a bit. So the first is that you can use different aggregates in the same query, right? As you notice, you have a count here, but you also have an average here, right? I'll let you all look at this for a minute. So what I do want to find out is, I want to find out who in this household has the most stuffed animals, and I want to find out what's the average age, right? Oh, yeah. I actually made a mistake already. Fantastic. Good. All good. That's great. It's a learning example. Fantastic. The other thing I want to point out is, so what's the difference between where and having? Where executes before the group by clause, right? So it filters out only the stuffed animals that have the type bear, barn owl, great horned owl, or chicken, right? And the order by is executed after the aggregations have happened. So in this case, I only want to show the owners that own at least 2 stuffed animals. Stuffed animals have to meet the where conditions, right? Because that got executed before the group by clause. I hope that makes sense. Cool. So some questions that you could ask yourself is, I want to get the sum of all elements in a column from a table. Do you need a group by for this? Right? If it's the sum of all elements in a table, you don't need a group by. You only need a group by if you want to have the sum of all elements according to a subgroup. If you say, I want to know the total result of the world population, you can just sum up all the countries. You don't need a group by for that. If you want to do the total spend of each department, how would you do about that? Well, you've just seen all the tools that you need for that. What goes into the group by clause? Again, something that we've talked about real quick. Just ask yourself this. If this doesn't make sense, ask, right? Cool. Now, there's a lot of useful functions in SQL. There are the string functions, and they can come in handy. Then there's the numerical functions. These will also be handy. Please also notice that for the modulo and many SQL dialects, you can also use the percentage symbol for that. And there is the greater and less than symbols and less than and equals to. You'll see some of these examples in the slides that follow. I'm only showing you some of these functions now. We're not going to go through all of them. And I don't think you'll need to know all of these functions by heart. But what I would encourage you to do is know what's possible, go through documentation top to bottom, just at least skim through it once, and just get an idea of what's possible, right? And in the real world, you're gonna have Google. You're not gonna be dependent on knowing all of this by heart. Data functions, I want to highlight. This comes up quite a bit. This can also come up in coding interviews quite a bit. It might be useful to know these. And then there's a category MISC. I want to spend a moment here and talk about these. So first of all, coalesce returns the first non-null value in a list, right? This can be useful. You can build ways around it too, right? Union throws everything together. If you have different columns, it just basically smashes them all next to each other. Limit is something that can help you execute queries faster. It can also help you with readability. It literally limits top or bottom results. Where you can use where in, you've seen a quick example of that earlier. And then you get provided a list as shown here. And then this executes where this element is in that list. Where column like is for string comparisons, where you want to have a fuzzy match. In this case, where it would be where example, and then anything after example in space. Case when statements can be used to, for aggregates, can be used to execute super useful stuff. I'd also want to look that up if I were you. I do think all of these should be in your toolkit, but yeah, just that. Another quick note is that even though there is no official order of execution in SQL, since it's a declarative language, there is an unofficial order. So, and that order executes most of the time. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it executes like this most of the time. And if I were you, I'd also look at that. If you get a tricky interview question, you can probably score bonus points by saying that's the general order. But if you want to know the real order, you need to look at the execution plan. That's not something you need on an everyday-to-day basis, but it's useful to know, I think. So again, I don't think you need to know every function that is in SQL by heart at all, but please get an idea of what's possible, right? And do skim through some of the documentations on the job you're going to have Google, right? That being said, though, SQL joins a must. No discussion, you're going to need this. SQL group by, same. That's what you have to know, not just for interviews, but if you ever work with SQL, that's not the kind of stuff you want to be looking up. SQL where, that's just the if statements. You're going to know that. That's also easy enough. And then SQL functions, well, yes, that's more advanced, right? And well, as we are speaking of SQL window functions, if you ever feel like you need to do SQL and you get really depressed that you need to do a window function because it's somewhat intimidating, I want to tell you it's not that hard. And this is where I want to take some time to walk you through that stuff, because I do see a lot of SQL interview questions that have window functions in it, and it's really not that bad. So here's some of the meat of this presentation today. Is I'm going to try to make all of you all feel warm and fuzzy about window functions, at least the first steps. In the end, you're going to have to practice all of this. You can't expect to watch a presentation and know enough to be a champion in SQL. But hopefully what I can help you with is show you how SQL functions are, window functions are mostly intuitive. They're not that hard. And if you do spend a bit of time in it, there's no reason why you shouldn't pass all those interviews and why you shouldn't have an easy enough time on your job if you need to use them. Good. Now, was there a question? I heard a sound pop up. I can't see that right now. If there isn't, I'm going.
It may have been a notification earlier. Jeremy just wrote in LOL when you were when your meme showed up here. So.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I know it's a bit.
I have a question.
Yeah, please, yes.
Yeah, about these window functions. I would like to see the example where we use them, like in the order.
They're coming up. There's lots of examples coming up. This is going to be the meat of the presentation. This isn't all I was going to show you about window functions.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
No worries. Thanks. Okay, so there are lots of different window functions. I'm not going to be able to go through them all, but I think the principle is mostly the same. What I do want to show you is how you can tackle the whole family of them, the whole family of window functions, and how you can. I'll show you some resources so you can practice them too. And then there's nothing stopping you from becoming a master at them. Okay, let's get right in. So say I want to see every transaction, and I also want to see what was the total of all of the transactions, right? Then what I might do also then is get a percentage of the total for each of these transactions, etc. So here's a simple example. I bolded the window function over here. This is the simplest possible window function I could think of, but I think this is a solid intro. So all this is this is the sum of all the elements in the table in here. Why is that useful? It's useful because you want to compare, okay, Leo purchased 11 with this order, 4 with that order, we have a total of 21. Yeah. If you don't further specify the over statement, it assumes that every element is part of that window. We'll break it down in a minute, and then it makes more sense. But I thought I'd start with the simplest, easiest example. Good. But now, what if you want to say, okay, but then I want to compare it to how many total items did Leo purchase, and not by all of the clients, but just how many did Leo purchase, or have it by client, right? Cool. Here's how that would look like. It would look like this. Now we have an over partition by. And that partition by, you can think of it as somewhat of an equivalent to a group by, as in the difference is there's no rollup, and that's the essential difference. There's no aggregate function for this in this case, right? As in, sorry, let me rephrase that. It doesn't merge all of the rows. You still see every single transaction, and that's the difference, right? If you did this in a group by, you'd only see Leo and the total. There's no way you could do this without a window function if you wanted to see every single order separately and the total. Now we can do both at the same time. So again, the difference here is this is the total for all of the customers, right? And this is the total partitioned by the client, right? So we see Leo purchased a total of 20. So we can see, okay, interesting. Order number 12 has 11 items in it out of 20 that Leo purchased, right? And so on. Cool. Now let's look at the next one.
If that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
So can you go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
So you said that this would not be possible without a window function. But I'm wondering, couldn't you also accomplish this by doing a join, like a left join with a query that just had the name of the individual and the sum of their order amounts?
Yes. So let me take this back. You would be, so again, in SQL in general, there's 1,000 different ways how you can do the same thing, right? I'm not claiming totalitarity as in this is the only, and thanks again for correcting me, good catch. What I do mean to show you is the elegant and mostly efficient ways. You can do quite a lot simulating window functions with workarounds. For some things, I think it'd be really ugly and really painful workaround. But yes, in this case, what you could actually do, perfect catch, thanks again, is you could have, you could join with the total and then merge on client, and that's exactly correct. So I take that back, that was wrong, good catch. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it.
My pleasure, thanks. But with a window function, it's straightforward. Especially imagine now you did many different aggregations. You do a lot of joins, and the window functions would be efficient. A window functions work. So the other approach would work, but if you had many different aggregations or rankings that you would want to do, the window functions would not just be more elegant and easier to read, it would also be more computationally efficient. Disclaimer, I'm not going to go through the depths of how to optimize your SQL queries, and that is a lot more advanced than I think anything you'd need in any interview or on the job until you reach mid to senior level. But do interrupt me, especially when I make mistakes like that. Thank you again. Cool. So now let's look at something similar, and that is a rank. Say you want to find out who are the most popular mentors on SharpestMinds, right? And you have a total popularity, and you want to give them a rank. This is what that would look like. You could do select mentor, blah, 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 popularity as pop, rank so-and-so, and then you order by the popularity descending, right? If you did popularity ascending, it would show our least popular mentor first. And like this, we see our most popular mentor first. This is the simplest example of rank I could think of. Cool. But then, of course, you can also rank over partitions. Here's a use case where that will more look like in the real world, maybe, right? You want to have, OK, I want to see the salary ranks per department, right? So you do the rank over the partition of that department, and you order by salary. In this case, unfortunately, if you don't add anything, it's ascending and not descending. So maybe not the best salary ranks in here, but you get the idea. And then in the end, you order by department ID, the output of that query, if I didn't make a mistake. Again, this is just rank, now with a partition by. Now you see, OK, so Pat is the first rank in the department ID 2. Michael is the second rank, right? And so forth. You have a different rank for each of these departments. Cool. All right. So things you could ask yourself is, when would you use over versus over and partition by, right? Another thing you could ask yourself is, can you combine window functions and group bys? Yes, you can. How would you go about that? And then how would you calculate the fraction of a client's purchases of all purchases, right? You can think about that for a second and then see how you want to implement that. I'm going to show you resources where you can practice a lot of that later. Just for now, right? Cool. Entile. It sounds scarier than it is. It's not related to any reptiles that I know of. You can use it for percentiles, quartiles, etc. I've written down a couple of simple examples. You want to have the quartile, right? And you want to have the percentile. That's what this would look like for a simple example. Now, please note, you can use this then with a where statement. And I think that's cool. That can potentially solve any of your questions for you already. What if you wanted to find the top 90th percentile, whatever, per department, right? What you can do is exactly this and add a where statement that says percentile over 90. right? And then you partition. This is not the greatest example in this case, but you partition by department and order by percentile, etc. Right? Cool. The same query from just now, one thing I want to highlight is you can use a window alias. If you write really long, complicated window functions, it might be useful to just merge a lot of your code. It's basically refactoring code, right? So both queries are exactly the same. In the first query, every time you spell out partition by start, over, by duration, etc. In the second query, you don't. Instead, you write over and then the name of the window. Now, in this case, it's a very easy example, and it might even look like more code in the second iteration of this query than the first. But imagine you were doing 20 different things with your window function, in which case this doesn't just help with writing less code, it also helps a lot with readability. Also, you can combine different windows, right? Cool. Now this is going to be fun. So if you were asked, how would you do a moving average? I think one, and I noticed the time, I've really stepped on the pedal here. Okay. One cool approach is a window function. There's other approaches, but for some approaches, I think a window function is the most straightforward, and other ones, the workaround is very, very painful, or maybe not even possible, but probably there is a way I can't think of. So here, we want to have two moving averages. I hope that's what I said earlier. Moving averages, one for 2 days and one for 30 days. Now, what we can use is we can use an average. That's what we're going to do. We're going to use an average, and then over the window. And the window is now going to be, you can think of it as a sliding window as you would use for moving averages. That's exactly what it is. And the code, what it looks like, it's a rows between one preceding and the current row. So now what it does is it takes the average of your current row and the one that is just before it. You can also do it with 30 days, and it would look like this. Rows between 29 preceding and the current row. All right. This is super useful stuff. This is the kind of stuff that you would use in your day-to-day quite a bit. Here's the kind of stuff that also I see come up in interview questions quite a bit. Cool. Yeah, I noticed that for this one, I did show another example where you can also use lag. Lag is another tool you can use with window functions. It's practically the same. I miss a comma after one. Apologies. What this does, it just builds a lag, as in you then have from the element before. And we're going to have time for some of the walkthroughs that I want to show in a minute. So yes, cool. So questions that you should ask yourself when you think about window functions that you could ask yourself is, how would I go about calculating a running total, right? If it's a total running total, is it a running total over the last 30 days? You can think, okay, now I've seen the example of an average. Now you can implement that with a sum. Same thing. How would you calculate a daily difference, right? I do believe that's in one of the examples we're going to walk through in a second. So how would you do that? You could use a lag, right? And then do one value minus the lag one, right? And that's your daily difference now. How would you calculate a fraction a client to spend on a certain product while still seeing all products? You can use sum and an over, and then partition by client, right? Compare a daily performance to the average daily performance over the last year. Yeah, you can then use, again, potentially a moving average for the last 365 days and compare that, if you compare it minus to the daily performance. And select the top 3 performers of each team. And you can use that for rank. And a where statement that filters out the rank, right? We've walked through all of that. And yeah, we walked through all a bit too quickly, potentially. But We're going to go through some more stuff. So real quick, some of the references before I forget that I've used for this and that I'm going to show you in a second too are Sql Zoo, Sql Bolt for some basic exercises, Sql Zoo more than basic exercises. Sql Zoo gets pretty hard. Sql Bolt remains pretty basic. W3 schools as a good resource to get started. And then all kinds of documentation. I named PostgreSQL as an example, but there's lots of documentation out there. And Modecom and SQL Tutorial.com also places where you can look for more stuff. Cool. So what I want to do now is have a quick chat. Any questions so far before we jump into some more worked exercises? I mean, not everyone at once.
I just wanted to say it's been
Sure.
really good so far. Oh, sorry, Paris. Actually,
Go ahead.
have a question. Shoot, sorry, one sec. Okay, can you show the references one more time?
Yes, of course. Bloop-de-doo. You can still see my screen, right? So I'm going to just pull this over for now. Can you see it?
Not quite yet.
I don't think you're currently sharing your screen, Leo.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. Yes, that's correct. What happened? Present now. Screen. Here we go again. Is that the screen with the PowerPoint right now?
Yep, perfect.
Cool. All right. So again, Sql Zoo, we're going to use that for a few examples in a second. And what I aim to do is walk you through some of these and a bit slower when how would you implement it. And then Sql Bolt, that's a very quick intro. W3 schools for definitions, things like that. And any kind of documentation that you can find. I listed PostgreSQL, but yeah. If you're interviewing at a place that uses a different SQL dialect, look that one up. And yeah.
And also, just quickly for Paris, we will be posting the video of this session later, so you'll be able to check this out, just see that screen. Mina is asking, can you please also mention about, how to connect to SQL Server and build a database? So this might be kind of like a little bit off topic, maybe like some of the pre-work that would go into setting this up, but if you have any thoughts.
I'd say let's put that in another session. This is more based on what you use in your. That's great points, right? This is more based on what you use on a day-to-day more, and what you are more likely to encounter in SQL interview coding questions. So, but it's good points, and I'll write that down right now, actually. Okay, thank you. That'll go into a future session. Sweet. Okay. Okay. So first, can you still see me? You can see the screen, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Cool. So the first thing I want to show is this is Sql Zoo. Sql Zoo is an establishment in how to learn SQL. In my opinion, it's fantastic. It's been around for 20 plus years. I think this has been used to teach. I read the number once. It must be approximating 11 million people now. It's one guy from Scotland who is coding it all up. Huge shout out to him. And it's great. It starts from the very basics, and it gets really hard. So if you can't do all of Sql Zoo in a day, that's to be expected. I'm going to show you some of the harder ones, and then we'll try to walk through some of the strategy that you would use, how to tackle the harder questions. But I do want to encourage this for even the very beginners, because it literally starts with select and aware. And then so it's great that the UI isn't always great in on this website. So sometimes you got to scroll and look around a bit, but it really goes through a lot of really good stuff. So first of all, this is a fantastic resource. And secondly, you can use this for any kind of queries. You don't need to just answer the question, right? You can do, well, what's the capital word? The country is Germany, right? Oh God, that example. It's not Bun anymore, okay? So this database updated. I swear I didn't know this. This is funny. Okay, well, but regardless, even if the database is a little outdated, this is great. Sorry. Even if the database is a little outdated, the SQL is up to date. It also gets updated regularly. And I'm going to show you some of the newest additions to SQL Zoo. That's what we're going to work on today. Bond. Fantastic. Good. Okay, so here's a few things that I wanted to show you today. And this might be more aligned with what you're going to see in interview questions, right? So window functions, again, because I think even though you might not have to do a window function in interview, I think it's fair for positions to ask somewhat some interview questions about SQL functions. If you say you know SQL well enough to work, then I think the expectation is that you know the basics, at least. Window functions are an advanced technique. Officially, they're an advanced technique. But as a data professional, I think you should know the basics of the advanced techniques, right? We're not talking about the hardcore optimization, and we're not talking about the biggest table with slowly moving dimensions and all that. Nope. But I think the basics of SQL functions should be fair. Cool. So so again, this is just to show you how you can practice this, and it's also show you how to tackle some of these, right? Again, if you want to chime in at this point, feel free. If you think this is not useful, okay. I wanted to show this and how you can study some of that stuff. I hope this is useful. Cool. So the first question is, let's skip it because I think all we need to do here would be, it says, so show the last name. So again, sorry, step back. First thing that you see is in any of these, right? Where's joins? Joins are here. Cool. First, you see the model, right? You see how the tables connect to each other, right? That's great. And then with this and your simple queries, you can explore and go around. There's always an example given in the beginning. But you always have the data model at the top, right? Cool. All right. That's not what we're going to do. So, wait, quick question first. Is SQL window functions the thing that is the most interesting to people here, or should we walk through something more basic first?
I don't know if maybe people want to drop some comments as well in the comment section. I guess maybe say, like, I don't know. Okay, Jeremy votes for window functions. All right. Window functions, says Mohammed. Okay, Isaiah, awesome. Okay.
Fantastic. Very good. Very good. That was my expectation too. Great. I wasn't completely off. Cool. All right. So let's find one. First, I want to show again this. If I didn't show this clearly enough, this I think is a pretty cool way how Andrew, I think is his name, showed how lag works, right? So if we do a lag for this partition, and then we will see it's exactly the same, just moved by one, and of course then the first one would be null. I think this is something that we can use for our next question here. And the next question is, the number of confirmed cases is cumulative. Cool. But we can use lag to recover the number of new cases reported for each day. Sweet. Okay. So what do we need to do here? Does someone have an idea? I gave you clues during the presentation.
Subtract the previous day from the current day's totals.
Cool. Let's do that. So maybe we could try saying confirmed is the current one. Confirmed minus the lag. I'm not sure if this dialect needs the parentheses, but I'm going to do that, right? And then see if that comes out. And then we might want to call this as, what was it called? new infections. We can call it new for now, right? Okay, see how this goes. Cool. So now we see, does this make sense, right? We have, and this was already filled in, so yeah, this is the harder part, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's do the easier ones first. Right, so this makes sense. The difference here looks to be 300. That's correct. That also looks right. Cool. Now it says wrong answer, too many columns. If you ever get stuck at Sql Zoo, it shows you what the answer should be at the bottom. And it looks like the only thing I have is I have this confirmed to, which it doesn't want to see. Let's see if that does it. And that's the correct answer. If you get the correct answer, you also get a smiley. Fantastic. Good. Now, the data gathered are necessarily estimates and inaccurate. However, by taking a longer time span, we can mitigate some of the effects. Haha, you can filter the day to view only Monday's figures. Okay, where weekday of when equals 0. Disclaimer, I didn't do this yet. So if I get stuck, bear with me. This was not what I was thinking it would do, but okay. It wants to see it where weekday, and it does filter for the weekday already. Cool. Now, how would you go about this? Well, we need what would we need? Someone have an idea?
I'd create a lag over 7 days.
Yeah, or 1 week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Cool. So it would look something like lag of confirmed. I want to do confirmed. I want to have, am I doing weeks? I'm doing weeks. I could also do 7 days. Weeks. And then over, you can see it's a, anytime you can see it's a window function, it says because it has an over in it. That's slightly exaggerated. But yeah, over is a clear indicator that that's a window function. And then you would want to partition by the week days, right? Wait, in Italy for each week. No, I want to partition by the country, sorry. Partition by name. And then I want order by the when, right? Okay. And that's, is that it? If you catch me missing something, just yell out. This needs a comma.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So if, because I see in your query here that your where is only looking at Italy. So if the entire table is all Italy, then we don't necessarily need to partition by the country, right?
What if you didn't partition by the country, though? Wait, sorry, might not have gone into this. Good catch. So if the order gets executed in the way that the Sql, because I should have highlighted this, thank you. And that is, this window function is in the select statement, right? So you're right. You know what? Let's see what first of all, let's see what happens when we take it out, right? I do believe you need it, but I could be wrong. If you just do order by when, well, let's see what happens. Too many columns. Too many columns is fine. Let's see what the solution should be like. I'm not quite sure this is what it should look like. But so it does the weekly, that's good. And it does the weekly the same way here. That's good. Oh, we don't need it confirmed. Some of the data is incorrect. Why is some of the data incorrect? The answer should be, yeah, no, I do think we need to partition by. Let's see if that does it. Great. Syntax by, order by. Oh, sorry, comma, no. And that's why you should do these exercises before you do, you do them online.
So this might not solve the error that you're currently encountering, but the trend that I noticed in the query you ran before you got this error is that the answer that they suggested was the difference from 1 week to the next, and instead it looked
also
cumulative.
That is also true. I'm just curious as to what that syntax error is right now. What happened? Order by, partition by name. Beautiful.
Here's an interesting question. Is it throwing an error because you don't actually need that partition by and it doesn't have anything to partition because all of the names are the same?
No, that should not throw an error. Even if you did have a where statement, only have one, you can still partition by that. But yeah, good thought. I must be missing something annoyingly. What am I doing here? So when
Does it have to do with the parentheses around your statement for as we total?
Can I ask something?
Of course.
Well, here you are partitioned by Italy.
Yes.
And also you are doing var name equals Italy.
Again, that should be fine. That's not. It's throwing me a syntax error. That it might. If that was the case, it could return like nothing, or it could return too many. But is something's not right where by name order by when?
Partition is misspelled.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Always
Party on. Thank you.
I'm really enjoying the way that was resolved. Sorry.
So first of all, again, yeah, that was a good catch with the confirmed, right? Because that's what they asked for in the question. Always read the question for and check your assumptions, right? Sweet. Cool. Then the other thing is, let's see what happens if we take out the Italy, right? So, yeah, we didn't need it. So you're also right about that. Since we have the where and where gets executed before the select, we didn't need the Italy. Cool.
Can you go over that order of operations one more time?
Generally, or in this case?
Yeah, just generally, like what declarations happen in order?
Right. Okay. I'm gonna also put this up here. Sql order of. I hope this is stack or dialect agnostic. So, oops, it's not. It's a little much. All right. So the where gets executed before the select, right? And the window is within the select. So that's why you're absolutely 100% right. The where filtered out the Italy, and we didn't need to have to partition by it too. Now, though, let's just actually do that as an example real quick, right? If you take this out, where, all right, weekday, And then you can do over. Did I spell it right? Name. You can now see it per country, right? That's the use case when you would use it per country. Cool. Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, sweet. But yeah, also a good catch of the Leon. That's a nice one. Cool, sweet. The other thing I want to show you is, oh shoot. Oh, here, cool. Rank examples, right? Wait, we didn't do this yet, did we? We didn't. Cool, I didn't do this yet. Great, sweet. So, and this is exactly how you'd practice SQL on your own as well. And this is a fantastic resource again. Is that interesting to you, or should we go for something else? We can also go for some of the more complicated joins, subqueries.
Maybe we can do another vote in the comments.
It's also 7 minutes left. Maybe you guys want to just ask questions instead, because I think I was a little slow solving the last one. Apologies.
Okay, I'm not seeing any votes, so maybe we can just go with Q&A just in case, and then.
Let's do that. Why not?
I got a question.
Cool.
And this relates back to what Joey put up in the chat earlier about rank versus dense rank, which I understand the difference between, but I don't know. Are there dialects of SQL that you can't differentiate between doing a rank or a dense rank declaration?
No idea. I don't know all the SQL dialects by heart. The ones I ended up using mostly is PostgreSQL, and strongly believe there is that difference, and the Microsoft dialects of SQL. I can't answer for the totalitarian SQL, no idea.
Okay, cool.
There is certain things that are missing in some dialects and certain things that have a different, that's one tricky thing when changing dialects is the order of arguments is often different. MySQL to PostgreSQL is in, if you do extract date, for example, sometimes you put the string first and then what you're trying to extract. I also want to show you that, well, in some of these tools, you can select what dialect to train in. SQL, so I do believe, has the Microsoft one and has MySQL, I believe. Any other questions?
What are some of the other more advanced SQL declarations that you either throw at people in interviews or have seen in interviews yourself?
Cool. Yeah, let me open a presentation quickly. Good question. So I do want to say date functions come up. I think that's just something that gets used too much to be ignored, in my opinion. Screen, screen, screen. So the difference, timestamp difference is something that I could think of. Current date, not so much, but extract. Did you see just now we took the day of the week, right? I think in the last example we did that.
Yep.
That kind of stuff comes up quite a bit. Not sure you call that too advanced, but so date functions, again, they annoyingly change from dialect to dialect a bit, but they're all the same, right? Once you know how extract works, you know how extract works. Sometimes you need to change the order of the arguments, but if you do that in any of you, you're fine. Change the order of the arguments, that's okay. And if it's something like, when I personally am in a coding challenge, I don't expect you to know every syntax by heart, unless it's like, I mean, if it's a group by, yeah, that you should know by heart. But if it is, hey, the order of arguments in this specific dialect, fine. I Google that. I don't, I Google that for the rest of my life, I think. So that should be okay. Other thing I want to highlight is where statements that use modulo maybe, or are there complicated where statements? Where you do where, and then there's a subquery, and you do where, and that is in, and then you put in a subquery in here. right? It would be where, in, select, ID. I've shown you an example of that in the presentation, right? And I think that's common, and then it can get more complicated. Case when can come up. An example, did I? Alas, next time. Yeah, I think that's mostly it. String stuff, less. The one thing I do want to highlight, though, is this one, where the column like. I think that comes up often enough and can also save you a lot of time.
I have a question about interview strategy. Yeah. So if you're like a time-constrained interview and a question, you're stuck on a question, but the next question depends on the previous question, how would you go about working through the interview?
First of all, interviews like that are tough, and maybe they should redesign an interview where everything's built on top of each other. Ideally, when you can't solve a part of the interview, your interviewer will help you there.
Yeah.
And just take notes that, okay, well, you needed a bit of help there. So what? It doesn't mean you should be discarded from the pool. The strategy should be, with any technical interview, with any coding interview, in my opinion, is the first thing that you do is ideally you go through every element that is in a coding interview as much as they disclose. If they disclose everything at once, that's exactly what you should do, is go through everything and see if you can estimate what takes the most amount of time and what takes probably what's expected you get done, what's the bonus points, and so on. Maybe you can even ask about this, right? Work a bit with the interviewer. What are the things that are important here, right? For example, if the subquery is really important and it's more important than, say, the string manipulation that you need to get there or something like that, then ideally your interviewer will tell you that if you ask. Maybe, but it is worth asking that. Okay, so now you've gathered the information as to what is important and how much time should you've at least try to budget it. Even if you're off of your budget, you've thought about it, and that's time well spent, because now you can check your time, and even if you're off by 20%, at least you have a check-in that says, okay, now, oh shit, I need to move on to the next thing. Maybe it's worth it for me to just ask for help here, get this completed, so there's this huge subtask that I want to tackle, right? So you should develop a strategy as to around, okay, how can I break up this complicated question into smaller questions? And which of these questions do I think I can answer, right? Ideally, which of these questions can I answer with help and without help? Okay, now that's a lot of stuff that a bit of practice goes into it, and you might not need all of that strategy planning to do every single question. Sometimes they don't disclose things and so on, and it's fair, but it doesn't hurt to ask, right? And the other thing I want to say is, again, if you have an idea how to move forward, break it down into the parts. Example, oh, I know I could tackle this with subqueries. Oh, I know I could tackle this with a series of joins. Okay, well, then draw it out. And as you draw that out, maybe on a sheet of paper, then either while you do it or after it, you thought about it for a second, walk your interviewer through your thought process of what you intend to do. If you're completely off topic, it makes it easy for the interviewer to help you, saying, is that really what you want to do? Or don't you think that this could cause an issue, right? And you can course correct before you completely get zoned into something that won't lead you to your goal. That depends a bit on the interviewer, but most interviewers have strong incentives to help you get through this. Interviewing data scientists is expensive, and there is a strong incentive for interviewers to help. So make it easy for the interviewer to help you. In SQL specifically, I would aim to show as much as you can during the time given. So even if you don't get through all the points, if the interviewer has seen that you could walk him through everything it would take solution, you might not need to code everything out to score really highly, right? Does this help at all? Does this make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay. Again, one thing that I like to do, and maybe I can do this real quick, show you. one thing real quick. What that would look like. Oh, give me 30 seconds. I just want to show this real quick what that would look like. Cool. All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Sorry we're going over by a tiny bit, but I just wanted to show you this real quick. Screen again. Screen. All right, cool. You can see my screen again, I hope.
Yep.
So one thing I like to do is in an interview, one thing you can do is you can draw it out as you just see, and you can be like, oh, here are my customers. Sorry, handwriting's terrible. And here's my purchases, right? And they merge on purchase ID, right? And then you also know you have the item type, item information here, right? And you can join it on item ID, right? And then you also know you have the text description of the item, right? And you can join it on item ID as well. Well, if you draw this out, this already gives you a plan on how you can tackle. For the subqueries, it's pretty much the same thing, right? If you say, okay, but this is a specific way how you need to get this part out, this join out, right? Then you know, now here's where your subquery goes, right? Select, where, so on, right? So what I would encourage to experiment with is, especially as you're studying, maybe even doing an interview, pen and paper, maybe some cutouts of just standard circles that you can overlap and play around with, just to see if you can visualize it. Sometimes it's easier once you visualize it, how you can come to a strategy, right? I hope that helps. Okay. Any last minute questions?
I have question irrelevant from SQL.
Sure.
Like every time I look at the office hours Slack, I cannot find the files.
Oh, so you'll be able to find the recordings of these sessions using your SharpestMinds account. So there's an events tab. If you click on the events tab, you should be able to see all the past events, which will include recordings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And thank you so much. Like, I love this weekly sessions. And that is so, like, I don't know, it's such a coincidence. Every time I'm like reading about a topic, and then I realize, oh my God, the same topic that I was reading, now we have here.
Well, I still hope it can still provide some value to you then. Yeah, and cool. And if you have any questions, if this was too fast or too slow, just let me know, and then I'll try to adjust. I know some people ask for SQL stuff. I hope this kind of helps you tackle the interviews, and then also ideally give you a head start on what you need to do in your day-to-day job. Again, SQL isn't going to go anywhere. It's here to stay. And I hope also some people are intimidated by window functions. I hope I could help with that a bit, even though when I coded out one example, I made some mistakes, but thank you. That just happens when you do it live. Should also show you that, hey, yeah, mistakes happen. Maybe that's a good sign for you guys too. There are more advanced SQL topics that I don't expect people to see in interview questions, such as indexing, optimizing queries, that sort of stuff. I do think that's more mid-level, senior level stuff. If you are going for these kind of positions, then yeah, let me try to put something about that together. Just let me know if that's of interest to you. If you're going for data scientist position, I think window functions are the harder end of what you're expected to do in an interview situation. I hope that helps.
Thanks a lot. Oh, sorry, Josh, go ahead.
Hi, Josh.
Yeah, would you expect window questions in a intern interview as a data scientist, or is this more of like a full-time thing?
No.
Cool.
So in an intern interview, probably not.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. That being said, if you don't have the time to practice them, if you can say in an interview, if we were to do something like this, I'd use an window function, right? If you just said that sentence in an interview saying, okay, if you asked me how to compute a moving average, I'd use a window functions, just that sentence puts you ahead of the competition for intern positions.
Okay, understood. So like if you could like pick like a few things to like try to like grind before an interview, maybe like a day or 2 days from now, it would be like, I guess, like tables and joins, I guess.
Yeah, joins, group bys. Honestly, that should get you pretty far in an intern position. I'm thinking date functions potentially, right?
Okay, understood.
Yep. But yeah,
thank you.
not and the occasional where the column name like, I think that should be plenty.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna have to hop. As always, if you have any questions or concerns or spotted mistakes or suggestions what I could do next, just shoot me a message. And I hope this helped the people who asked for SQL.